Thank you, so much for, taking the time to have a chat. I guess we should probably start for those that, haven't yet, read up on the film, in a nutshell, what's Greywood's plot about?
Greywood's plot is a black and white, low budget sort of comedy horror about two friends who get a videotape sent to them with has footage of a supposed chupacabra, and they're cryptozoologists. And they decide to go on this adventure as their friendship is kind of falling apart. Dom and Miles are the two characters, and they adventure onto this sort of eccentric recluse of a man, Doug Greywood's plot of land in northern Minnesota. And they're going to attempt to make a documentary about this footage that they found, and things go awry.
Nice. I mean, you started your career in animation. How did you then make that leap into the live action side? Because I mean, a lot of people either are one or the other, but obviously you have traversed both.
Yeah, so I actually got into animation because I liked making movies so much and just filming on the weekends with my friends. And I mean, that's what I did as a kid, was sneak into the closet and steal my dad's video camera, the old VHS camera, and I'd take it and go shoot movies with my friends until my dad would get annoyed that he didn't have any tapes left. And so, but I always wanted to be doing it. It was like I wanted to be creating something out of nothing all the time. And I found out early on when we got our first computer that I could draw multiple pictures in like Paint, in like Microsoft Paint, and put it into whatever the Windows Movie Maker was at the time. I think it was called like Video Wizard or something like that. And I could put like one frame at a time and play it back and make these little animations, which then would be, like on my dad's desktop would be 100 Paint images saved out. And he'd be like, what? Why? But I'd make these little animations that were basically like South Park ripoffs. It was at the time of South Park. I was, pre-high school, just a kid who wanted to make some bloody cartoons. So I would make a gory little cartoons of, kids, trying to do jackassy type things, and then blood would spray everywhere, and it was a good old time. And then from there, it seemed as I was like getting through high school, I was still making movies as much as I could, just fun things with friends. I realized the actual, like, going the path of film industry in Minnesota, coming from a relatively poor family, poor background. I didn't have a ton of money. I was like, I mean, not poor, but like, it didn't feel the film industry going out to LA, all of that, it didn't seem viable to me. And I was like, well, I could get into animation, and there's plenty of animation work in Minnesota or wherever I could go. There's always need for animation. And so I sort of did that to pay the bills. And but I also found that I could be creatively satisfied making cartoons as well. So I was making a lot of cartoons and animating a lot until I got to that point where I think it was like my 30th birthday. I was thinking about it and talking to my wife, and I'm like, I'm 30 years old. We have kids, we have a mortgage, I have a good job, all of this stuff. But the only thing that was ever on my bucket list was to make a feature film. Like, that's literally the only thing I ever wanted to do, which in theory should be the easiest thing. I like making movies. It shouldn't be that difficult to go out and make a movie. So then I sat down and started thinking about, like, what's the one idea I always wanted to do? And that was, I wanted to make a movie where Daniel, who plays Doug Greywood in the movie, has been my best friend since kindergarten. I wanted to make a movie where Daniel was Dr. Frankenstein to me being a Frankenstein monster. I wanted to become like a Frankenstein monster. And so we started writing out this concept. And for my 31st birthday, me and Daniel and Keith all decided we're going to go out in the woods and try shooting something. Didn't have a full script, had note cards and scenes. I had a concept that I had laid out throughout the year, but I was just like, let's just go and see what happens. And the three of us went out into the woods, and somehow Strauss, who plays the fly man in the movie, Strauss just showed up as well. I don't know. He just rode with Daniel. Daniel was like packing up to go, and Strauss was like, can I come? And Daniel was like, all right, I guess. And Strauss showed up as well. And the four of us just tried making a movie and failed miserably the first time. And then I ended up on a reality show making this first movie, The Good Exorcist, with Robert Rodriguez as Rebel Without a Crew. And that just got like the making a movie out of my system. Like, that was just my film school learning. And then the day we wrapped filming of The Good Exorcist, I turned to Daniel and I was like, man, you know what we got to do? He's like, yeah, we got to go finish Greywood's plot. So I came back and I started writing, and I actually wrote out a script, finished it, got it all ready. And then that summer we went out in the woods as I was like on going to film festivals with The Good Exorcist, and I'm starting to screen, and it was finished. While all that was happening, we went out and filmed Greywood's plot over the weekends, and whenever we had free time, we would just go film.
And like you said, it's yourself and some friends that made this. Why you star in it as well as doing work but behind the camera. Are you all sort of aspiring actors along with filmmakers, or was it just a way to sort of save on the crew?
Yeah, it was just based on the necessity of we couldn't get a bunch of people to go out in the woods for my birthday, so instead we just were like, well, we'll just play these parts and see what happens. And Daniel is much more of an actor. Daniel likes to act, and when he came and played Father Gill in The Good Exorcist, it was very much our intention, like, okay, you're gonna have to act in this. You're gonna have to learn the craft. And he's acted in all of my short films. He's been with me since the beginning. It just based on necessity of he was the friend who got in front of the camera when I was filming. And Keith had no drive to act. He doesn't care. He just shows up. I've known Keith since I was a baby. Like we met, he's 13 days younger than me, and we met probably when I was, 14 days old. So I've known Keith my entire life, and I was just like, dude, we're making this movie. Can you come out and be in it? And he was like, yeah, fine, man, whatever. And showed up and does a great job. And everyone like put forth an effort to do our best, even though we knew what we were working with. We were just like, let's just try hard and see what we can get if we try hard.
I mean, obviously the film, takes place in black and white. Was that an intentional stylistic choice, or did that come about later on?
It was intentional later on. So when we first went into the woods, we didn't really even know what the movie was. It was originally going to be Daniel, or the monster that Dom becomes was supposed to be a Spider-Man. Like that was the idea. Was I'm terrified of spiders. I have arachnophobia, and I was like, I want to become the thing that scares me. But as we were filming the first time in the woods, we kept coming back to dog things. Like that just kept like becoming a thing that came up between the dog chain that we got at a Walmart. Just like randomly, we found this chain that had grown into the tree, and we were like, oh, what if we do this scene where chained to a tree? And we wrote that in, and then Keith and I were sitting on a hay bale, and I asked him what his favorite animal was, just improvising, and he said a dog. And then I, for some reason, said Bigfoot was my favorite animal. And that scene ended up, we rewrote it and put it in the movie, but that came from just an improv conversation between Keith and I. And so all these dog things kept coming back, and that's sort of what the movie ends up becoming, is more about that. But after, when we filmed that first time, we just didn't really know what we were doing. We had some great footage and some really fun scenes, but it just wasn't cohesive. I like to say we failed miserably, but the truth is it was more like a test run, and we have a ton of great footage that made it from the movie, or made it into the movie from that first shoot. But as Daniel and I were looking at that footage from the first shoot, every once in a while I'd be like, I wonder what this shot looks like in black and white. And we'd look at it, we'd be like, we're kind of making like a throwback to the movies we grew up watching, the like B movies that Daniel and I just loved. Universal monster movies, or stuff like The Brain That Wouldn't Die. Like I love that kind of movie. There's a movie called Terrorism Man that was like a big inspiration for this. There's like a monster cat man in the movie, and I love that Island of Dr. Moreau style movie. So that this was very much my answer to like the Island of Dr. Moreau. I wanted Daniel to be Dr. Moreau. And so as we were like going through it on the first filming, we were like, well, it looks great in color, but it looks really great in black and white. And then instantly explains to the audience what this movie is. You sit down and you go, oh, okay, I get what they're going for. It's a throwback black and white movie with potentially monsters in it. So when we went back to film the second time, we were very intentional about the black and white. We lit it for black and white. We were like focusing on, I don't even think we saw it in color, because I had changed my monitor that we used to see the footage. I had turned the saturation all the way down, so we were only seeing it in black and white. It's all in color, but it's been in black and white since like the infancy of the actual edit.
I mean, one of the, you sort of already touched upon it, but one of the elements that I really liked was the dialogue. I found it was really witty and sort of snippy and sort of acid lace. How many passes did it take you guys to do that, or was it was it again, as with the, the Big Butt Dog story, was it something that was sort of improv and then you scribbled it down and worked it in?
A lot of it was improv, and then like we did it that first run, we sort of found it, and then the second time I sat down and actually wrote the script. It's very much like a back and forth between Daniel and I as we write. So we use a software called Writer's Duet, a writer duet, and we so we can write at the same time, and I'll write in the morning and I'll write out a sequence, and then Daniel will hop on and sort of like make it a little bit more bantery and a little bit funnier, and then I'll take that and like add my thing to it, and we just sort of make it like back and forth. It is sort of like a conversation between Daniel and I. And or like things like there's a sequence between my mom and I that was just a scene I wrote because I wanted my mom to actually be in the movie and say terrible things at me. I thought that would be funny, so we just went with that because I was like, I wonder how far I can push my mom to say things like she wishes I was never born and whatnot. So a lot of it was that, but there was quite a bit of it that was sort of improv in the moment or writing. Daniel and I will get to set and sit down and read through the scene and then run with it. And some of my favorite lines are stuff that was improv or just made up on the fly, or stuff that came from an improv session, like the conversation between Keith and I about holding a beer, like how you hold a beer at the top or at the bottom and how it warms the beer. That was just an improv between Keith and I from the first time, where we were just kind of like, that's the kind of like, I wanted there to be like this meanness in the two of them as their friendship is sort of divorcing. I've seen a lot of movies where, it's about two people who aren't friends who go out in the woods and then they become friends as the movie progresses. Or you see the movie where it is about two friends and then they sort of have a falling out, something goes wrong, and then their friendship has to be rekindled or whatever. I wanted to just like start with, no, this has been a long running friendship that's at its end. Like this is the divorce of a friendship. And that was a major theme in the movie, was friendship from the other side of things. People don't think of friendship all the time as being like a sort of intimate relationship, like an important thing between two people. Did I just pull out my audio? It's a relationship, and those relationships can end. It happens all the time, but we always see friendship as this like super positive thing. I wanted it not to be that. I wanted to show, ironically, because it very much is three friends who have been friends our entire lives, going out there and being like, well, what if we're not friends? Like, what is that like if our friendship falls apart and you guys get sick of making movies with me? So there was very much that like personal touch of taking from how I actually feel a little bit and what it could be like, even though it's not like that at all. In fact, the opposite happened. They showed up and became as in love with this project and as motivated to actually make it happen and finish it as I was.
And I mean, obviously the film, like you said, it's low budget, but it does have, some practical effects in. How did you, achieve these on no money? Because there's plenty of other horror films, will chuck, a few $100,000 at something.
Yeah, so that, I mean, a big part of it was knowing what we have and what we can work with, and mixing all of the post-production effects were done by me. I just did them in my free time. I'd get off work and I'd come home and work on visual effects. I rode the bus to work at the time that I was working on this movie, and I would just do visual effects on the bus every day with people peering over my shoulders, watching me remove my own face digitally and things like that. And but then the practical stuff, spoiler alert to a certain extent, but I don't care. I personally believe it's one of those kind of movies that you sort of have to see to even understand. But there's a monster effect at the end of the movie, and it's all practical. The whole cowl is practical, and we learned how to do that ourselves. Strauss more than anyone. Strauss, like I said, just kind of showed up on the first week of shooting, and by the end, Strauss was like my first AD, my right-hand man. Like I need him on every project now, because he just gets things done. I had talked to a couple of visual effects people about, or special effects people about making the Dog Man costume, and I was getting quotes that were like $6,000, $10,000, and I was like, my budget's $100 in booze, guys. Like I don't have that kind of budget. So I talked to Strauss, and he was like, I think we could figure out how to do this. I'm like, really? You think so? He's like, I'm looking it up online right now. He went on YouTube, he took a couple courses, and he's like, all right, let's give it a shot. I'm coming over. I bought the stuff to like put on your face to make the mold, and then I'll make the Dogman mask, and we'll make like a latex mask. And I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. So he showed up with all of the ingredients to like do a face cast, and I gave my kids video cameras and cell phones, and I told them to run around and film, because if I like died in my kitchen, I wanted to make sure we at least had proof of what happened. So my kids ran around and we filmed it. I have that footage somewhere. I think it's like I cut like a little thing of it for my Patreon. And so there's so we did it, and then Strauss, used clay, or made the mold of my head, and then used clay to make this Dogman mask, and then did the latex of it and did the whole thing. And it turned out great. And it cost us a few $100s in supplies. I think it was like, when all was said and done, that ended up being $500 in supplies, but we have enough to make 10 more of them. Like, you buy it in bulk. So he's got like stuff to make more. And right now he's actually in the process of making like a animatronic gremlin. He ran with it. He had so much fun doing it. He went all out, and now he's making tons of these monsters, and it's really cool to see.
I mean, I have to say, as you're speaking, I'm very jealous of the friends that you have. The commitment to help you achieve your dream. I mean, you don't get that very often in life, I don't think.
I don't think so either. And that's why, like, for me, it has been one of those things where when people ask me about getting budgets, or like the excitement of getting on bigger projects, I always am I'm torn, because of course I want a bigger budget. Of course I want to pay my friends. I want to make a thing out of it, but I also don't want to be like stuck in a system where we can't have this fun and do these crazy things and try stuff out, because we're all very much dedicated to it. And I'm very lucky to have such a dedicated crew, which it literally became a crew. It started as 3 friends. And I remember there was a day, there's the scene that takes place in the living forest, where Miles is like running through all these monsters that are like grown into trees. And for that sequence, what I did was I actually shot that on my 32nd birthday. Everything happens on my birthdays. I use my birthdays as an excuse to make movies. And so for my 32nd birthday, we were almost done with filming. This was like the second to last scene we had to film. And I'm like, hey, everyone, I'm throwing a big old birthday party in the woods. Come out, don't bring gifts, don't bring booze, don't bring food. I'll have all of that. Instead, go buy monster makeup, go buy zombie makeup, and make yourself into a zombie. Whatever zombie you want to be, do that, and I'm going to put you in the trees. And so a bunch of friends came out and we filmed that sequence. But as we were filming that sequence, that was the first time I really realized how much of a crew we'd become, because we had people who had never been on a film set before. They had no idea what they were doing, and I had to be directing them. And I needed Keith, Daniel, and Strauss to be like doing the behind the scenes work. And it was like, I could be like, hey guys, I need 3-point lighting set up, and I want to make sure we're backlighting that tree. Daniel, we're going to need the guts out here in like 10 minutes on Sarah, because I want her up against this tree over here. And everyone was just moving. Like, I'm like, I want a track shot here. Strauss, would you be down to set up the track? Strauss was setting up the track. Daniel's holding a fog machine. Like, everything came together. And that's when I was like, wow, we went from being like 4 morons getting drunk in the woods filming to being like filmmakers. We actually kind of pulled this off somehow.
Nice. I mean, there's, it's clear that you're a lover of film. There's so many sort of like little nods and references peppered throughout. I think one of my favorites, I don't know how intentional it was, but it's like a nod to Legette with there's a certain camera angle where sort of looking in the mirror when sort of in operation that's very Legette. So I mean, was there any films that you purposely sort of set out to pay homage to?
I love that. There are so many. It just like the whole movie was just like that subtle, trying not to steal, but like just kind of like showing the love of what it is. And there are like, there's probably hundreds of them. Some of them I don't even remember at this point, or like, because they're such small, where I would like look for a clip, or like scenes. There are references to like so many little, like down to like in the score when Keith is coming out of the living forest, when Miles is coming out of the living forest, the music, even though it's like Home on the Range, we wanted to have this like sort of Wizard of Oz dreaminess to the score. So like, that's to me, like as subtle as that little homage is, it's the kind of thing where I'm like, I want people to feel nostalgic for things, or even just, using public domain songs and re-recording our own versions of them that we could kind of get away with using. There was like a lot of stuff where I wanted the audience to be comfortable visually or with the sort of style of the movie, but also be able to be shocked a little bit as the movie takes its very, very strange turns all over the place. Yeah, there are so many references. There was one review that someone did where they just like started counting out the homages, and I was just like, wow, I really did like go kind of big on referencing different shots or different. I mean, even the gun in the glove box is a reference to From Dusk Till Dawn, which was a reference to something else. I mean, it's all like we're all kind of, as filmmakers, we just love, if you really love film, it's impossible not to do that, because you just come up with an idea where you're like, oh, that's not my idea. I'm actually like taking that, I'm just going to go with it. I'm just going to let that run and play. But yeah, there's so many.
And I mean, Fright Fest pass holders, are frantically at home, trying to figure out what they're going to watch, when they're going to watch it at the festival. What are they going to get that they might not get from some of the other films on offer if they plump for Greywoods?
Well, they're going to be able to watch the movie with the filmmaker and his mom. There's that. So, which it will be funny because my mom is in the movie and she has watched it once in the theater and has seen it a couple times. But when you get to when it gets to her baby boy being placed on a table and terrible things happening, it's fun to watch her squirm in the theater. So you get that. But also, I think just in general, there is this like, I don't know, I don't want to sound like self-righteous or something like that, but there is something about no budget independent filmmaking that you can feel the seams, you can see the filmmaking in it, and it's just a completely different experience than sitting in something that's big budget or even has a budget and is trying to look like other things and trying to be something that you kind of can see all the time. I think Greywood's has like an experience of, especially for like at a film festival where a lot of people there are filmmakers or like true film lovers, love the process, love seeing what you can kind of get away with. That's the whole movie, is seeing what we could get away with versus what we just threw money at.
Well, I'm sure they're going to love it.
I hope so. I hope people come out and dig it and can kind of get into the experience of what it is. I wanted to, I grew up with Robert Rodriguez and the El Mariachi story, or Kevin Smith and the Clerk story. And every so often, like, or all the time, the technology is changing, the way people watch films is changing, the way people just enjoy entertainment and art in general has changed. And so when we set out to make Greywoods, it definitely was like, well, what's the modern take on the El Mariachi story? Like, how do you do it now? And I really wanted to try that. So whether we pulled it off or not, who knows? But I feel like personally, I was able to get away with basically doing what Robert Rodriguez did on El Mariachi, and hopefully people can kind of see that and enjoy it for what it is.